You might not be aware of this, but you are not what you do. This is a very important distinction if you want to preserve your peace, your well-being. If you want to have a good head on your shoulders for the long haul, you have to understand that you are not what you do. You know, I've been working with a lot of clients over the last 8 years, and one of the biggest flaws I've seen, again, especially in men, is that they think they are the thing that they're doing. For instance, a world-class athlete, oftentimes UFC fighters or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, they think they are the sport that they're playing. Their whole identity revolves around the sport that they're playing. I see it a lot in NFL players too. These sports require so much of an individual that the identity becomes attached to the sport. You know, right now I'm actually working with Brian Cushing. He was an ex-NFL player, and he was sharing with me the same things that you hear all over YouTube and online right now about football players, which is that after you retire from football, it's very hard to understand your identity, or it's hard to understand who you are without the sport, because it's so immersive, so intense that you think you are the thing that you're doing. Another arena this happens is in entrepreneurship. A super successful entrepreneur has a whole character behind the entrepreneur. He'll have certain clothes and certain activities and certain ways that he speaks, and eventually they become attached to that character and they think that they are the entrepreneur. So for example, for me, I'm Josh Macin. I'm not the detox dude, right? My wife has to remind me sometimes, you're not the detox dude, you're Josh Macin. Who are you underneath this business character that you have? And so I'm Josh, and that's separate to the detox dudes. And we're gonna get into why this is important and why you should actually give a shit about it. But recently there was a Netflix documentary that came out where the title explains this whole concept the best of anything I've ever seen. The title is I'm Tim. That's the name of the documentary. And what it also is a statement that Avicii says in the documentary to essentially reclaim something that is deeply his. Underneath all of the flash and the glitz and the glam, the chaos and the money and the traveling of Avicii, he recognizes that he's Tim, and Tim is different than Avicii. So who you are being underneath it all, your core essence underneath it all, is different to what you are doing. Now, I'm not trying to be super spiritual here in some perfect idealistic sense of like, dissolve your ego, namaste, you are not the thing that you're doing. It's not like that. In a seriously just raw, grounded way, if you don't have space from what you do and you don't have access to how you be and who you are underneath it all, the identifications will always lead to physical and mental illness and stress and tension in the body. Actually, an example of this is Avicii. If you look at his life and what happened, he let the character spiral out of control and he lost access to his core self. And many other celebrities fall victim to this as well. They literally can't feel themselves or their core self anymore because the voltage and intensity of what others want them to be or how they're supposed to be, or all of the pressure clouds their ability to feel themselves and to feel beingness. I remember one of the most powerful documentaries that I've ever seen that illustrates this was that documentary of Louis Capaldi, who in the span of a few years literally aged like 25 years because he got so famous and there was so much voltage on him that he started to lose access to his core inner self, to his core beingness. And even though he's a super humble, super amazing guy, he got lost in the sauce of what he is supposed to be. And that voltage of celebrityism, let's call it, literally, in my vision, created a disease. He started to get Tourette's and he started to get a tic, and you could see it develop. It's like his body started to change with all of the voltage of what it took to be famous. And so what I've learned is essentially everyone has a core identity, a core self. In fact, when you're around certain people who have this connection to their core self, their gaze might penetrate you. They carry themselves a certain way. They may have access to a subterranean parts of themselves that's maybe attractive or magnetic or interesting. You know, just one example of a guy who I've seen on YouTube, when I look at him, I'm like, wow, this is a really strong man with a strong sense of core self, is this guy.
Analogy here is that there are times in meditation when everything will be flat. Flat, what I mean, times in our life, in our practice, when there is not enough enthusiasm because there is none of that wave to catch. So we just float there. But we need to be ready. When the wave comes, we catch that wave.
And then there are people, of course, who still have core self, but who just don't have access to it in this time and place.
Take your shirt off for a minute. Just take it off for a minute. I'm going to show you guys something. Do you have a lot of money in the bank?
No.
Okay. Does that make you happy?
No.
Okay. Do you guys see yourself naked in the mirror every single day before you go out of the house? Okay. Do you like how you look? We just go numb. We're just like, fuck it, man. I'm gonna wear a sweatshirt today. And I want you to write this down, discipline. And I want you to, as a matter of fact, I want you to write it on the fucking mirror, discipline. And every day I want you to look at yourself in that mirror and I want you to ask yourself, how fucking disciplined do you look? You tell customers that you're gonna do stuff for them. Why? You don't even look like you're taking care of yourself. How are you gonna take care of me?
By the way, in these videos, I'm going to be using examples in culture and YouTube and celebrities and athletes for the things that I'm talking about. I'm not trying to talk shit about them or sound like I'm better than anyone or put anyone in a box that this defines them and that's what they're destined to be for the rest of their life. I don't actually know these people. Maybe they're different than what they're showing up online. And of course, my vision can also just be entirely wrong. I'm doing this because number one, I enjoy popular culture. Like I enjoy looking at stuff on YouTube. I enjoy watching documentaries. I enjoy putting spiritual vision on what's happening in the world. And I believe it's one of the best ways where I can help you activate your vision, which is a huge part of this channel. And also, side note, I'm addicted to YouTube. It's one of my vices right now. And so let me at least use all of these ridiculous, nonsensical videos I watch to my advantage and talk about them in a spiritual way. Back to the subject at hand, this core identity is very important for well-being. It's very important for your understanding of your human experience, and having connection to your core identity protects you. It keeps you humble, it keeps you grounded, and your core identity is never the thing that you are doing, even if you're the best in the world at it. Your core identity is how you be in the world. Your core identity is the you underneath all of the temporary changes of human life. As soon as you lose that core identity, that nakedness, that vulnerability, or if you attach it to something that you are doing, you're setting yourself up for failure, because the act of doing is going to have ups and downs, and the things that you're doing can also disappear altogether. Like for instance, a career-ending injury that I've seen in athletes. Also, the funny thing is, when someone doesn't have access to core presence and beingness, it's terribly boring. And it's why wives will cheat on their husbands, even if their husband is a billionaire or a world-class athlete, because you become predictable and boring when you don't have a connection to that thing deep inside of you that exists underneath all of the things that you are doing. And the billionaire might be cheated on and he's gonna think, how could she cheat on me after all I've done for her? Not realizing that women are not interested in what you're doing for them all the time. They're interested in how you show up on a presence level. They're interested in how you show up emotionally, connected, available. No amount of doing, even $1 billion, by the way, can make up for being. A woman is not gonna be interested in you for life and connected to you and open to you if you are a completely emotionless or inability to be vulnerable billionaire. You are not what you are doing. There is something underneath it. Your children want it, your partners want it, life wants it, and you want it too. So for me, the way this played out in my life is, I was a world-class fighter with jiu-jitsu. I had a serious back injury in 2018. I could hardly walk. And for 3 weeks, I was screaming in pain, unable to even stand up. And I remember being in a taxi on a way to a doctor's appointment. The taxi driver was just some random dude who normally in my past, I would always feel like I could destroy anyone physically who's in my path, for the most part. And that gave me a sense of confidence and it made me feel like I wasn't vulnerable. I remember being literally unable to stand, thinking this taxi driver can literally kill me right now or do anything he wants to me because I can't even stand and I can't even do anything. I couldn't even move my arms because my back hurt so much and I was helpless. And over the course of a couple years, my fighter character, which by the way, this is like a side note, I can now see fighter characters in people. There are people's faces. My face changed from the time I was a fighter to who I am now. Like the shape of my face, how my face looked energetically, emotionally. Fighting is so intense that it literally changes your face, right? And so I had like a fighter character on and I wore that t-shirt and I wore that character and I was associated with it and I had to eventually let it melt off of me. And yeah, now I'm still tough. I can still fight. I still have skills, but I'm not identified with being a fighter 24/7. I've let that character melt off of me. And in fact, I've had to because I spent a year in a crippled state. state. And I'm way more free without the character. And that's the difference. I have forces inside of me that are capable of the fighting without needing to be identified with the character of being a fighter, right? That's the difference. That's a summary. Let's just use one other little fun example from YouTube. I just have to rip on this guy. He's a billionaire, and he's an example of what addiction to doing is without the ability for beingness.
You have never met anybody like me, and you probably never will, because you're a cunt. Where's the vagina cream? I give you this vagina cream so you can rub it on your snatch, because you're all cunts. And everybody you know is a cunt. Don't you understand that? Do you know anybody with any balls whatsoever? Do you know any real men?
I don't know this guy, but most likely he is stuck in a world of proving himself through doing, getting all of his validation through doing, and avoiding any possible rejection, weakness, or vulnerability in the world. And so this requires a massive amount of life force to uphold. Usually will cause disease, illness, tension, and stress in the body over the long haul. If you want peace, if you want to de-stress your body, you'll have to understand that there is a beingness underneath the doing. And the beingness, in terms of rejuvenation, in terms of healing, it's more important. A few hours of beingness is more important than 2 weeks of a vacation in the Maldives, Bahamas, Bora Bora, if you're doing that vacation from a place of doing, checking things off the list, not being present. Let's go do this, but you're still working while you're there. You're constantly in doing. Beingness is what's going to allow you to let go, rejuvenate, relax, and have mental, emotional stability amidst all the chaos in the world. In terms of beingness, what does that practically look like? Well, the most simple example, guys, if you just take 6 hours to yourself without your phones, without your TVs, you don't even have to be in nature. You could just be around the house. What happens after a few hours is that your mind will slow down. This incessant CD that's spinning all the time will slow down, and you'll start to just feel what it's like to be. And what that means is there's no agenda. You don't need to accomplish anything. You don't need to finish anything off of your to-do list. You're more present with your surroundings. It's a pleasant feeling of love in your body and quiet in your mind and in your heart. This is why people meditate, because meditation facilitates beingness. Now, you can still operate from beingness. You can still do amazing things from beingness, but ultimately it's a feeling where you no longer are the narrator of your life, thinking and narrating about everything. You drop into a sense of presence and beingness where you are one with your surroundings. You're connected to your surroundings. Your thoughts are not dominating and owning you, and your experience becomes the moment versus your thoughts. Now, that's possibly an entire video that we can do, but all you need to do is take some hours to yourself without technology, preferably in nature, to remember what beingness feels like. By the way, having a character is not a bad thing. Like when you're crushing business, you need the ability to plug into an entrepreneur character. When you're on sales calls, you need to be able to plug into a character. When you're fighting, you need to be able to plug into a victorious alpha dominant character. The issue is not having a character, because as Shakespeare said, the most authentic people in the world are actors, because everyone is acting, but they're the only ones who admit it. And so we always use characters. The issue is, number one, when you don't have the ability to take off the hat, then you are a slave to that character. The other issue, number two, is when you no longer need that character. I am not fighting anymore. I am not in a fight or flight, fighting to the death in jiu-jitsu or in my childhood or in my life. That type of stress and tension and adrenal drainage that happens with fight or flight, I don't need that anymore. I'm safe. My life is amazing. There's no tiger around the corner chasing me. That fighter character relies on the fact that someone is out there trying to be better than him, trying to get him, trying to fight him. And so being stuck in that character when I don't need it anymore is also a problem. And you end up becoming a slave to your character, and that's an issue when it comes to sovereignty and being truly you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing and leaving a comment below with what you want to hear more of.